Hello and welcome back. Well, we're out and about on campus here at the Student Hub Live Open Day. Now, one of the key things at an open day is to talk about the money, the fees, the loans, the funding and how all of that works. And so who should I have here but Colin Beesley. Colin, thank you for coming along. You're Senior Manager of Policy and Control within the Academic Services Department at the Open University. That sounds like a very important job, and I'm told that you know everything about fees and funding for our students. So
put me on the spot a bit there. Fees and funding, it's quite a complex picture when you consider the whole thing from the university's perspective. But for each individual student, actually it's relatively simple. So each student will have a fee that applies to them, and they will have access to various different types of funding that applies to them. So they, in the broadest possible sense, that a student can either pay for their studies themselves using their own funds, or they can access government funding. And it varies a little bit across the UK nations, and the funding's slightly different across the UK nations, and the fees are different across the UK nations. But a student will have one fee, and they will have access to the support that's available to them.
Okay, so in a nutshell, there are lots and lots of differences, and we can't obviously go into all of that, but what I was hoping is that you could give our students a sort of overall picture about the sorts of things they need to do and the order in which they might need to do them, and then who they might go to for help, because you and your team are so helpful and supportive with these various stages, which can be a little bit confusing for students. So a lot of students have some sort of financial support or loan when they study with the Open University. It's very, very normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The vast majority of students, certainly in England, access the tuition fee loans. In Scotland, actually, there's a slightly different funding system, and you might consider it to be slightly more generous, where the government actually pays for the student study if they have an income below a certain threshold.
Right.
Northern Ireland actually now has a combination of the two, so they have a tuition fee loan and also a tuition fee grant, which is means tested and non-repayable, and Wales has quite a similar system to England at undergraduate. This year we've seen really, really big changes in postgraduate world as well. So there's new funding products available in all of the UK nations. In Wales and England, it's a kind of maintenance type loan, so there's a sum of money paid to students periodically throughout their studies, to essentially for them to use towards whatever they want to, so they could buy books and paper and pens and cars, if highlighters, all that sort of crucial study stuff. And in Northern Ireland and Scotland, it's a tuition fee loan, so it's specifically used to cover the cost of the tuition fee, and it's paid directly to the university rather than directly to the student. Really, the first thing a student needs to do is get in touch and ideally browse on the website and give some consideration to what it is they want to study, because the funding may be slightly different depending on the level of study that they want to do. We have a series of, or I don't have a series, we have a group of student recruitment and support centres now, where they're staffed by absolute experts in OU study, and all the student would need to do is give them a call and have a discussion and make sure that they're prepared to come and study with us, give consideration to the funding options, what level they want to study at. Do they want to study at access level, or perhaps even some informal learning? So that we offer free open learn courses and MOOCs and all that sort of thing, which might be better for some students depending on their circumstances.
Right, okay. So these student support and recruitment centres, they're a really good place to go, and I guess because there's such an individual level of funding involved, it would make sense to talk to them about it. How might students, though, before they make a decision, because some of our students have already enrolled and they're all sorted, for other students they may not have enrolled, and they would need to, if they wanted to start with one of our biggest starts, really, it's early September, I think, is the final date that you can enrol for the end of September, but most people are doing it now. So they need to register, and then separate to that, they need to complete some sort of form about how they're going to pay.
That's right. It's a kind of twin track approach. There's the stuff the student would need to do with the university to make sure that they're studying the module that they want to study and it's going to suit them. And at the side of that, they also have to get in touch with whoever their funding authority might be and arrange for their funding to be put in place.
Right.
So there's a different funding authority for each of the UK nations. There's Student Finance England, Student Finance Wales, Student Finance Northern Ireland, and the Student Awards Agency for Scotland.
Right.
The application processes are relatively similar. The same sort of questions get asked, but obviously the applications need to go off to slightly different people. And we always advise students to apply as early as they possibly can, because it can take 6 to 8 weeks for the whole process to be completed. More often than not, assuming everything's fine, it will happen quicker than that. But occasionally there are delays and queries and issues that need to be resolved.
So these are external agencies, and obviously we work with them, but we
yeah.
can't sort of do too much. So it's important to get the right forms completed correctly, isn't it?
Exactly that, yeah. And what The process, in principle, it's relatively simple, but it's very easy to get simple bits of it
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
So the online application process for funding is dead easy. So you complete all the forms, it asks you the right questions. As long as you answer them honestly and accurately,
Yeah.
you won't have a problem. But at the end, you've still got to print off a bit of paper and sign it and send it into the
Right.
funding authority to get the funding approved completely.
Okay, so that takes about 6 to 8 weeks, and I guess it's better to start it earlier. Or do
It
they
is.
have a sort of cut-off date where they do it all? Or?
No, you can actually apply for funding up to 9 months after your course has started.
Wow.
But obviously, you would need to find a way to fund the course with this to complete your registration in the first place.
Okay, all right, brilliant. Have we covered most of the stuff that we wanted to cover about the loans then and those sorts of grants?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if in any doubt, give us a call.
Yeah.
We've got lots of experts at the university.
Yeah.
We're starting to build really strong relationships with all the funding authorities.
Yeah.
And while we can't fix really big problems, we do have contacts we can go to help unblock things if they get sticky for students.
Okay, so if somebody hasn't had, might they call you or should they wait a certain amount of time? What will the process be?
It's well worth giving us a call. It's not going to
Yeah.
do any harm. We can have,
Yeah.
we have access to the SLC, kind of the Student Loans Company database, so we can see
Right.
kind of the status of an application as it's
Okay.
progressing. And if there's any issues, we can flag those up and ask the student to resolve them.
Okay, so you mentioned that people can apply up to 9 months after the start of a module, but they would need to fund something before that. Is that a common thing?
It's relatively uncommon, but
Yeah.
but for students whose circumstances change during their study, it can be useful.
Okay.
Because the university does offer an Open University student budget account. So
Right.
it's a different type of loan to the tuition fee loan. With the tuition fee loan, it's income contingent, which means you'll only repay. Or you repay a proportion of the amount based on how much you earn, as opposed to a commercial type loan where you have set repayments each
Yeah.
month. Lots of students still choose to go down the USBAR route because they can afford to do it and they think it's easier and simpler and it works
Okay.
better for their circumstances.
So USBAR then is a way of effectively paying for it, but splitting the money up on quite a low interest.
It is, yeah. I believe the current interest rate is 5.1%, which
Okay, that's good.
is actually lower than the current tuition fee loan interest rate, which is
Right.
the rate of inflation plus 3%. So
Okay.
as of today, I think it's about 6.2%.
Right.
So in comparative terms, it's a better deal.
Yeah.
But equally, the repayment structure may not suit you on an USBAR product as opposed to a tuition fee loan.
Okay.
Because with USBAR, you start repaying more or less immediately. So once
Right.
you start studying, you start repaying.
Yeah.
With a tuition fee loan, you don't repay till much later.
Okay, and of course some students might be in the lucky position where they can pay outright for their tuition, but irrespective, everyone needs to have registered by a certain point, and then it's sorting out the finance.
Well, you would place a reservation first. That would be
Right.
the first kind of part of the process.
Yeah.
You then go off and source your funding, and once you've got your funding in place, you can complete registration.
Okay.
So with the loan element, what you will be given is a customer reference number by the Student Loans Company, and you can
Okay.
use that to complete your registration and
Okay.
sign all your paperwork and agree to the terms and conditions and all that sort of stuff.
Right, and if you're going to pay outright for everything from very early on, when do you have to do that? Can you register and do you have to pay it then and there, or
You
how
don't
does that
have
all
to.
work?
You can delay the you can delay the completion of your registration for a
Okay.
while after you've reserved. Lots of students choose to do it there and then.
Yeah.
If the student subsequently decides that they don't want to proceed, then they can get a refund as long as they haven't started their study.
Okay, brilliant. So what would your advice be for students who are in this process and they're thinking about finance? I mean, and I'd like to come back to the postgraduate just because there have been a few changes there I wonder if you could fill us in on. But from an undergraduate perspective, what advice would you give students in terms of what to do and in what order? I know we've talked about that order, but what would you say is the best?
My advice would be to speak to us first, decide what you want to do, and then the very next thing, ideally at the exact same time, go off and start sourcing your funding, because
Right.
unfortunately, things can and do go wrong, and it causes delays, and it can cause quite significant problems later down the line if the funding's not in place.
Right, okay, excellent. All right, so we'll do that, that's brilliant. Now, you mentioned there have been some changes, and again, we can't be sort of too specific, but it's very exciting what's been happening in the postgraduate area.
It is, it's fantastic news. So it's an area that's been overlooked really in
Yeah.
terms of funding until very recently. Last year we saw the introduction of a postgraduate loan in England.
Yeah.
Wales have now essentially copied that product, and it's exactly the same. So it's a cash sum paid directly to the student throughout the studies.
Yeah.
And this year we've also got a Northern Ireland tuition fee loan for postgraduate students and a Scottish tuition fee loan. So there's lots of ways for students to access postgraduate study now, whereas before cost has always been quite a significant barrier.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. We've got some sections on the website, so if you want to find out any more about that, then you can do so. One other thing I wanted to ask about in terms of money, because this is our sort of money section, is do OU students sort of count as full-time? Can they get council tax reductions and things? And what sort of benefits are there for being a student?
No, unfortunately, well, perhaps it's not unfortunate, perhaps it's fortunate. So OU courses are designated as part-time courses,
Right.
so a course is either designated as full-time or part-time.
Yeah.
Everything that we offer, with the exception of one particular course, which I won't go into now, is a part-time course, which means you're not entitled to the sort of student type reductions in,
Right.
in benefits that other students see. But on the other side of that is actually it doesn't impinge on your right to claim other kind of state-sponsored benefits such as job seekers allowance or JSA or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay, excellent. And there's one benefit I know, because Topshop do a very good student discount, and you can get an NUS card with USA, the Open University Students Association, and that is a really, really good thing to do as soon as you start studying, to get that card and go and show your student discount, and you'll be amazed actually at where you get it. And also it's a really good thing going in and saying, I'm a student, and what sort of discount do you have for me?
I'm a huge fan of Top Man, yes.
Excellent. Colin, that's been a really useful session. Are there any questions, I wonder, that we haven't covered? Do let us know. There are a variety of ways that you can connect with us. We've got our hashtag, which is StudentHubLive17. You can email us, which is studenthub@open.ac.uk. And of course, you can put questions to the chat on the social media desk. But Colin, thank you very much for filling us in on all things financial for the moment. And again, the take-home messages are to register separately if you're going for funding, to complete those forms and get your funding in place, because it does have that 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, do it as soon as possible. Yeah.
Excellent, that's perfect. Right, well, I hope that session has been very useful for you. We've got lots more coming up, and we're going to look at our next session at various issues that might come into play for students. So we've got some members from our student support team here. So question and answer session coming up. Do let us know anything that you'd like clarified. And our next video that we're going to show you is a building just over there, which is the Jenny Lee video. So in our campus tour, we're going to tell you why that building is called Jenny Lee Building. We'll see you again in a few minutes. Bye.